we have just gotten some huge news from Geoff Johns and Sci-Fi Wire about the direction that DC Comics will be going in the next few months. A new, I guess it's going to be a mini called Doomsday Clock, written by Geoff Johns, that will be coming out in November. And this is some big news. At the time of recording this, the button has not officially finished. We still have to wait for the release of Part 4, which is the current crossover that's dealing with this whole Watchmen thing. And Geoff Johns just gave a really, really good interview, so I just want to go through it a little bit and dissect some of the information. So, number one, it's kind of broken up into these little bits, which I kind of like. So, number one, this is not a Watchmen sequel. It's something else. It is Watchmen colliding with the DC Universe. It is the most personal and most epic, utterly mind-bending project I have ever worked on in my career. That's saying something. With Rebirth, I opened the door to Manhattan. So, for anyone that wasn't sure if Manhattan would be the antagonist or playing a part in this whole storyline, anyone who thought it was a red herring, right from Geoff Johns' mouth, Dr. Manhattan. Part of that was I loved the real world influence Watchmen has. I put Manhattan out there and always thought there was a Manhattan Superman story to be told, but then it grew. So the story has evolved since the DC Universe one-shot. It seems like Superman might play a bigger role than I initially anticipated. It took my heart and soul over. Still, at the core of it, there is a being who has lost his humanity and distanced himself from it. An alien who embodies humanity more than most humans. I love the idea that Watchmen influenced DC, but what would that look like in reverse? And it goes well beyond that. Number two, this is a standalone story. We're not going to do a story like this unless we 100,000% believe in it. It is all about the story, and it is only about the story. There are no crossovers, no watered-down one-shots or miniseries on top of this one. This is a standalone story. I'm really excited about this. Having said that, this statement kind of makes me think that this is not going to be the culmination of this whole Watchmen story. I still do think that next summer we will be getting some sort of crisis to resolve this whole thing, but it sounds like this is going to be, at least from what we're getting in this interview, it sounds like this is going to be where we get, I guess, the backstory as to why Dr. Manhattan would be doing this and altering the DC universe. And it sounds like this might be where we get a little bit more information on the Watchmen characters' involvement, and maybe even the proper introduction of a lot of them to the story. We had no interest in doing a crossover with this. We didn't want to see Dr. Manhattan facing off against Superman in Action Comics, with all due respect. That is not what this is about. This is about something different. It will have an impact on the entire DC Universe. It will affect everything moving forward and everything that has come before. It will touch the thematic and literal essence of DC. Yeah, sounds good. What characters are involved in the story? There will be DC characters throughout this, but this will focus in on only a handful. There is a lot of focus on Superman and Dr. Manhattan. Again, that is kind of surprising because so far Superman seems to mostly have been involved with the Dr. Oz character. So far it seems like Batman and Flash have been researching the Dr. Manhattan side of things a little bit more, so I'm excited for those things to come together a little bit. Dr. Manhattan is a huge focus, and his reasons for being here and doing what he does ultimately have to do with Superman. And there are many, many more characters to be involved, but it is a bit early to discuss. I think that this might lead into us getting reintroduced to some teams that have not been reintroduced yet. We know that Jay Garrick and by extension probably the GSA will be reintroduced through the button. although, we're still a couple of days from seeing how that turns out. But I think that this could be where the Legion starts coming in a little bit more. And if not the Legion, maybe something like Young Justice or something like that. But I think that's, other than Superman, I think that's kind of what he might be talking about with other characters being involved. That's my prediction. When Rebirth kicked off, I wrote the special and I worked with all the teams, and all the books did their own thing. I talked to Gary and said there's a really interesting story with Dr. Manhattan and his point of view and the intersection into what is the DC Universe. We debated whether we would even want to do it because it's a big job. We talked for 6 months, and the truth is it wasn't until the election and post-election that I called Gary and said, we've got the complete story. So that's interesting. So it definitely, the story's definitely evolved since it started, and it sounds like a lot of what's going to be brought out in this mini, I'm assuming it's a mini, but it's probably going to be a lot more personal and a lot more to do with Dr. Manhattan's actual motivation, and I'm really excited to read that. I think it's going to add a lot of depth to this whole storyline, and let's see, continues on to say it is about much more than the American president or the reactions to him. That is low-hanging fruit to me. It goes bigger, deeper. It is about the world and the attitude of people. I feel like there are extremes now everywhere, extremes on all sides. There is no more olive branch. It doesn't exist. I feel like people more and more are separated. They are choosing sides instead of figuring out how to make life better together. There is a real sense of anger and frustration, and there is not a lot of compassion or willingness to understand the world. Telling a story of two extremes and exploring what our collective zeitgeist states through these characters is what we're doing. We think it's important. The truth is, if the world and the country didn't go a certain way, I don't know that we'd be telling this story. For us, this story would not exist if the last year didn't unfold the way it did, and the rise of extremism wasn't so palpable. I think that's really interesting, and I think that does really play into what they're trying to do even in terms of what they were trying to do in the beginning in the one-shot, with emphasizing the grittier aspects of comic books with the more lighthearted aspect of comic books and kind of pitting those two extremes against each other. I totally agree with that, and in terms of getting a little political, that's kind of where Watchmen was originally, so I think it makes sense to play with some of those storytelling possibilities. On John's partnership with Gary Frank, yeah, he talks, I don't really want to go through this too much. He talks about working with Gary Frank, and it's interesting, but it's not really has to do with it doesn't really have to do with predicting what's coming. About the title, it takes the iconic elements of both Superman and Watchmen and the DC Universe. Felt like the perfect title. I like the DC, used to be called the Doomsday Clock. That's kind of cool. But I took the off. Obviously, people know who Doomsday is, but he's not a part of the story, but I like the implications of it. Yeah, especially considering that it has to do with Superman. People will think that the last time they heard Doomsday and Superman, he died, so what is this going to be? What is he going to go through this time, and how will it affect them going forward? Yeah, I think it's a cool, clever title. If Rebirth brought hope back to the DCU, will the grime of Watchmen infect it? That's exactly the point of the story. Will it? Can it? I believe in the power of these icons. I believe in the power of hope and optimism. I don't think it's fake. People tend to say if it's grim and gritty, it's real and grounded. I refuse that. I don't care if it stirs up drama, but I want it to be drama in the right way. I think Gary and I have earned the right to do a story we believe in. With Rebirth, I think we've proved we care and take this seriously. We love Watchmen and we love the DC Universe. I pretty much agree with what he says there, and I think that's an interesting theme for the story. If there were doubts in tackling this story, have I had doubts about the story? That's why it's not coming out till November. It didn't come out until It didn't come out last November or last July. Gary and I both equally thought only if we have a story that we have to tell. So I don't know if they initially intended to go into this whole backstory with why Dr. Manhattan's doing this, or at least not to the extreme that it seems like they're going to with this mini. It sounds like this initially might have been addressed in something like again, this is going on the assumption that we're going to see this wrapped up in a crisis-like event, but it sounds like a lot of Dr. Manhattan's motivation and the storyline behind that was going to be addressed there. I like that it is getting its own focus in this mini. I think that will really, really add to it, especially since the Watchmen characters are a little bit more character-focused. And I don't think just doing an action piece with them would work as well. On the emotional connections to the Rebirth special was so personal and so important to me. It was not about relaunching a line. It was about a story I wanted to tell. That's why it was so good. I don't think all my comics turn out great, but that one I do because I believe in it so much. I felt it. I didn't like the DC universe where it was, and wanted a story that put it back what I missed as a fan. This challenges Rebirth and is sort of, can I reaffirm Rebirth? And spoilers to Flash 22, which is coming out on Wednesday. At the end of Flash 22, Batman sees a signal from Wayne Manor and questions answering it. That's exactly what Manhattan wanted. What he wanted was to get Bruce out of the way. So I guess we know that that's going to happen at the end. And apparently the final page will show a battered Superman shield. To by design, what are the flaws in Superman? How far can Superman fall? We're going to find out. There's still so much more to come, but we'll get deeper into it soon. So that is some huge information. First of all, it definitely 100% confirms that Manhattan is the one behind everything. Look, I'm a little disappointed that we have to wait till November. And I'm sure that part of that also has to do with the fact that the Justice League movie is coming out in November, and they probably want to use this to help hype it. I can't blame them for that. It's just I was kind of hoping that we'd be introduced to a little bit more of this and getting a few more answers from the Button. But I'm very excited about this. I think that it's a great idea to give us a mini focusing more on the Dr. Manhattan's influence and why he's doing this. Sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. But yeah, I'm really excited for it, and I think that this interview gives us a lot to think about. And the fact that Superman's playing such a big role, I didn't quite see coming. I think that this means that his son John's going to play a really big role. Lately, it's been hinted at in the Superman book that John should be more powerful than he is, and that because he is a mix of Kryptonian and human, he actually has powers far beyond what Superman has, kind of like a Dragon Ball Z Gohan kind of thing. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and I think John's going to play a pretty big role in this going forward. That's probably my biggest prediction. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. What do you guys think? What are your predictions? Let me know in the comments. And in a couple days, when the last part of the Button comes out, I'm going to do a video on that too. So